Hi everyone, this is Kelly from The Truth in Story, and we are here for another Divination Spotlight. The last one that I did was Tarot, which is one of my primary forms of divination that I use professionally. And so of course I had to also touch on Lenormand because that is equally, in terms of my professional practice, Lenormand is certainly equal, and if not slightly, if I was to go purely by statistics, it may actually be slightly higher in part of my practice, but it's a pretty 50-50, and then of course there's lots of miscellaneous other things, but it's certainly one of my primary forms of readings. It was the very first reading that I sold professionally, was a Grand Tableau with Lenormand, so it does have a special place in my heart. I don't even have my first deck here because I'm trying this thing where I have just certain decks out for the season, so to speak, and then I'm going to go back and, around the winter solstice and change things up again, and then just have certain primary decks that I use all the time out as well. And so I didn't want to dig it out from where I put all my decks away. So, but we have plenty here to take a look at. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about Lenormand or Lenormand, or it's a beautiful, beautiful cartomancy system that originated in Germany in the 1830s. Now, this is, I have a couple of the decks out that I really love, as well as my own deck, of course. This is my primary deck at now, and it has been since I had my first prototype, of course. I mean, it obviously makes sense. It's my deck. I painted it. It's mine. It's painted to my understandings and my thoughts of Lenormand. So for me, it is perfect because I made it for me. So I will be showing you that as a showing sort of the way things are morphing. But let's start a little bit at the beginning. So Lenormand, unlike Tarot, which is a 78 card system, right? Lenormand is in what I call the realm of cartomancy. Now, technically, everything that you use to read with cards is cartomancy. But I personally look at tarot and oracle is sort of tarot and oracle systems over here. And then over here, I think about cartomancy, which are generally smaller size decks, poker bridge size decks that are based on playing cards in a large degree. Not all of them, like Kipper is not, one-to-one basis on playing cards, but many of them are, and certainly the way in which they read is very reminiscent of playing card reading. So Lenormand, Sibylla, Gypsy Witch, I know there's more of them, but I'm completely blanking. Playing cards themselves, right? These style of reading became really popular in the 1800s, and they were based off of current playing cards. So the Lenormand deck is a 36 card deck that is based off of the 36 cards in a German playing card at the time, even though these are not, obviously. I think the German cards would have probably had acorns, and I can't remember all the suits, but I know one of them is acorns, which I absolutely love. But they are based off of a 36 card playing card deck, and each of the cards themselves are associated with one of those 36 playing cards. Now, I haven't seen a direct correlation to the like more traditional style playing card reading and the meanings of the cards, so that's quite interesting. But we do have a card associated with each one of these cards. Now, they are also strongly connected with, there's differing histories and mythologies surrounding Lenormand, just as there are many different mythologies surrounding the origins of tarot. And so one of the reigning mythologies behind the origins of Lenormand or Lenormand, and yes, I know that's how you should pronounce it, but I feel ridiculous pronouncing it that way. And so I do say Lenormand. And truthfully, my preference is actually the Game of Hope. So, but there is a mythology that Mademoiselle Lenormand, who was a fortune teller for Napoleon and Josephine, and a notorious one who has things written about her. She was very popular with the upper class and telling fortunes, and she used a card deck to tell fortunes. Most likely it was a Marseille style deck, or simply a playing card deck, or maybe combinations of the two. We're pretty sure it was there. we can pretty safely say that the Lenormand deck did not come from her, even though it bears her name. It seems to have been a fairly smart marketing ploy on somebody's, not, after her death, a marketing ploy to market a deck of divination cards. It made sense and it kind of worked, right? But we can more directly connect it to a card game called the Game of Hope, which had 36 cards with symbols on it based off of coffee ground readings, which are very similar to tea leaf readings, in which you drink coffee or you drink your tea and you swirl around the dregs at the bottom and either dump the cup and then see, and you look for the patterns, and oh, that looks like the pattern of a ship. Oh, that looks like the pattern of a clover, right, in the cup. And so the symbols that were part of the Game of Hope were connected with the same symbols that you would traditionally be looking for in coffee ground readings, and again, tea leaf readings are quite similar as well. So that is sort of the history there. And of course, as all things, as I said with tarot, the idea that it came from a game, but it was a game based on very old style of divination through coffee grounds or tea leaves, that type style of reading. For me, that does not diminish that somebody would pick up a deck of straight up playing cards, right? I read with playing cards. I love to read with playing cards. But that somebody would, we as a people tend to take the things that are around us and use them for divining. People across ages, one of the things that links us together is that eternal questioning, and we always have questions, and we always want to know what's going to happen, why did something happen, and what is going to happen, and how, what are we going to do here, and how do I know if I'm making the right decision here? We're eternally looking for answers, right? And so people across time have picked up bones because they were handy and cast bones. They would pick up sticks and drop piles of sticks and see the way that they would lay. Pick up a deck of playing cards because it's something that people had in their house and learned and put associations on it and read and divine with it. That's something that has been happening for a long time. So for me, there is no less mysticalness or no less magic about something that derives from a game than something that comes from some esoteric scholar sitting in a library somewhere figuring out an exact way to set a set of divination system, right? That doesn't make it less. In fact, for me, it actually makes it even more wonderful. But then you can always have that argument, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Did this game develop because, or any of the other tarot or these things, did they develop because of that human questioning, and so the certain archetypes and things came into them because of that, or do we lay them on top of that? All kinds of wonderful musings. But in the end, what we're left with are wonderful systems, and Lenormand is a wonderful system. So this is an example of what an older deck might look like. You will have a image of the playing card that it is associated with. Then you will have a very obvious image of whatever it is. This is the cavalier or the rider, and so we have a man on a horse. He's a rider. Now there are decks that have poems. Of course, they were in German at first, that have little poems in them. And this is the Bluebird Lenormand, which is one that I highly recommend for beginning readers of Lenormand. And So this is a beautiful example of this. And there are modern decks that keep that beautiful aesthetic, which we're going to look at here. And there's another one that I've got over there that I need to grab and show you as well. But this is a great deck for beginners. So for example, for the Rider, heed well good news from the Cavalier, impassioned views promise good cheer. Sadness that hides veiled in the day, once disguised, soon flies away. So we know that good things are coming, good news is coming. So any sadness is there is going to fly away with this news that's coming. So you get a little hint with the poem there. So we have that, and then of course we have the image, and very often we actually have the name of the card on the deck, or else it's just so obvious that it isn't really necessary sometimes. And so there are 36 cards of this nature that are quite clean and simple. We have a rider, we have the moon, we have a coffin, we have the road, sometimes the paths, sometimes the crossroads, we have a house, we have a ring to do with commitment, we have a key, put the right lock in, key in the right lock and you have success there. We have clouds dampening and clouding things up. We have clover, those little bits of happiness that we find when we're paying attention. We have the stork, we have good news and good transitions. Things are moving and moving in a good way. We have the lady card, which we're going to talk about in a minute. We have the tree, our roots, our sense of health and well-being. We have the tower, which can be bigger buildings and structures such as, you know, a courthouse and those types of things, but or university and these kinds of things. But it often means getting a step back, getting up and gaining some perspective. We have the man, so a gentleman and a lady. We have a heart, of course, for love. We have birds for chatter, but it also can be a little bit about anxiety. We have cross for that bigger weighted thing and a sense of duty. We have a dog for loyalty. We have the anchor for that sense of stabilizing and that idea of security. It's kind of anchoring things down, right? This is also a work card for some traditions. Again, there are French traditions, there are German traditions, there are traditions there that can change the way you look at significators. But again, this is not an exhaustive look at Lenormand. There are tons of Lenormand videos on my channel. I have a playlist for Lenormand. I also have a playlist for 31, what did we call it? Lenormand. And that kind of starts from the beginning and works all the way to the end to give you a really basic understanding of Lenormand. This video is not intended to do that, so I'm just kind of giving you, again, it's a snapshot. We have the book for secret sometimes and knowledge. We have the scythe, which is a painful cutting situation that can often reap benefits. We have children, things that are new and exciting. We have mice that are eating things away. We have the garden where we were going to go and promenade through and make our connections and reach out to business associates and flirt with people that we're interested in. We have the snake, right, which can be in some traditions deceitfulness, as in the Garden of Eden, but can also be a sort of confusing or more winding path versus a straight path, but it is often leading to transformation, like the shedding of the skin. The star card, following your star, following your destiny. The bear card for a sort of strong mother energy, internal strengths that you might have. The ship card for long journeys. The sun card for big happiness that pulls everything up. Flowers. So people send you a bouquet of flowers. It's wonderful happiness and luck coming to you from afar, you know, from somebody. Something is coming to you. We have the fox, the much maligned fox. Sometimes this is a work card in French traditions. Sometimes it is a tricky person. It is a little bit of a trickstery, but he's also somebody who's quite smart and quite clever, and it's about thinking outside of the box. We have the letter card for messages and things that are written down, setting our intentions on paper. The fish card for abundance or money. The mountain card for obstacles, but you can still get around them. You can go over it, get around it, but But it is in your way a little bit. The Lilies card, which can be about family and balance and harmony, and sometimes sexuality, again, depending on your school of thought. And then we have the Birch Rod, the Whip, or the Broom, as the three they're most often called, about repetitive motion. Sometimes they are negative patterns that you're stuck in. They can be about arguments, but sometimes it's just about repetitiveness, things that we're doing over and over again. And that makes up the 36 cards in a very fast nutshell of Lenormand. It is a quick fire style of reading, but you can see these particular playing cards are stunning. They're full painted playing card associations, which are really, really beautiful. The Bluebird Lenormand is a gorgeous, gorgeous deck. This is a beautiful deck that I need to trim, which is called the Lenormand Oracle cards by Los Scarabeo, that my friend Bart was able to help me pick up for far cheaper than you can get it here. And again, the same. These you'll see have no playing card associations, and they don't have the names on them, but they're very obvious. This is the Sun card, right? Once you kind of know the basics, you know, okay, this is the Sun card. There's the Mice card, right? There's the Paths card, Clouds and Bear and Cross. This has a neat feature in this deck of a lot of almost empty space, but it's really beautiful. We have the Gardens, the Mountain, the Letter. You can see that they're quite obvious what they are. The Fox card, the Star card, the Child, the Coffin, the Man, the Rider. You don't need often, if a deck is very clear like that, you don't really need the names on it. I don't use playing card associations a lot. I'll use them for secondary information. So I prefer to have the playing card association, at least in some small way, which I'll show you in a minute, on the cards, but I can certainly read without them. So there's that one. This is one of my all-time favorite. It's a remake of one of my all-time favorite decks. One of my first Lenormand decks. One of my first few, and the one I probably used the most, was called The Game of Hope. And it was a mini-size deck because once I realized how much I loved it, it was already sold out of the full size. This is a bridge size, which is a little more narrow than poker. And she remade the deck, which has, I think, the most beautiful back of a Lenormand deck ever. This is probably the most sweetest deck of a back ever. This is the most stunning back ever with matte. Yeah, it's just gorgeous all around, and the cards themselves have the number, have the playing cards inserts there in black. I do wish that they were actually black and red or something, so it was easier, more quickly to see the color, what suit the card was in, but again, that doesn't stop me. It does not have the titles, but it's not necessary. This can be a little bit confusing because there's the cross here, but again, as soon as you see it once, you can know it forever, right? But we have the Stork, right? The Book. There's a Child. There's a Rider. There's the Whip and the Broom. There's a beautiful bouquet. There's an Anchor. There's a Garden. There's a gorgeous house and ominous clouds, but it's sun is shining over here. We have Clover. We have the Key. We have the Snake. We have the Man. So we have all of these gorgeous cards that, again, one of my favorite and probably one of my most used because it was one of my earlier decks that I had. Again, this is a remake of that, but that's beautiful. And then but this is still fairly traditional style. We've got the number, right? We've got sort of a almost like stamping here. We've got the playing card insert. We have the beautiful kind of painted imagery. So this still is very, very reminiscent of a traditional, older style Lenormand deck. But then we now are seeing a boom in Lenormand decks. It's nothing like Tarot yet. It's nothing like Oracle yet. But we are certainly seeing a boom of beautiful Lenormand decks. I have quite a few. This is one of my favorites. Of course, this is from my friend Anna Torian, who also did the Oracle of Echoes and the Hidden Waters Tarot, and she's working on the Abyss Tarot, which is a black and white sketch deck that I can't wait for. And she's also illustrating Avalon's deck. But I found her through, or I got to know her through her creating this deck and the Oracle of Echoes. But she had put up, this is one of my favorite, all-time favorite dog cards. Look at that. This has no playing card associations on this deck either. It has the number. It does have the title. But you can see it is quite modern in a sense, but still so simple to read with, as well as beautiful. It's like being in a fairy tale. The mice and the sun and the clover and the birds and the child, right? It's still very clear what they are, but is absolutely stunning, and I use this deck a lot. So there is that, which is called the Claire de Lune Lenormand. Please excuse my brain. I did want to mention this one as well because, of course, as with tarot, people tend to ask me, what are the decks that you recommend? And we are going to look at my deck in a minute because it's my deck and I love it. But the one decks that I most often recommend for beginners, I get this question a lot, is the Bluebird Lenormand or the Piatnik Lenormand, which is the very first deck that I had, and is very cheap to get and very easy to get, and very clear and very clean. This is stunning. I highly recommend the Bluebird, the Piatnik, or this is one of my absolute favorites, which is the Maybe Lenormand. I have gifted by the wonderful Ryan a hand-painted version of this deck. Again, playing card associations, numbers, no names, and this deck has extra cards, but don't let that dissuade you from this deck, because it is clean and it is simple and it is absolutely stunning, and it is also mass produced through in a beautiful packaging through US Games. I have walkthroughs, I believe, of all of these decks that you're seeing, but this is a wonderful set. I love it. It's one of my favorite backs as well. And you can take out, as you're learning, just take the 36 cards out and work with those. But they are so simple and easy to read as well, and just beautifully, beautifully done. So I always highly recommend the Bluebird, the Maybe, or the Piatnik as beginner decks. Always. So I had to get that out there because people will ask. But then we do have a lot of people creating beautiful renditions of Lenormand decks. And I wanted to make a Lenormand deck because I use Lenormand constantly. I love Lenormand. And so when I decided to make a deck based off of color and sort of energetic movement, what would the card look like in color and in energy and the way that it moves? What would that look like? And sitting with each card and doing a painting. I have, again, walkthrough of my deck as well, which is called the Story in Color Lenormand. And you will see that this does not have what you have seen, very simple images. So this is the rider card. There is no rider, but there is the name of the card, the number of the card, and the playing card association, such as the 9 of Hearts. So at least the information is there. But for me, this is what represents balance. What does balance look like? What does harmony look like? What does the sun look like? What does the sun energetically feel like? What does the tower feel like energetically, that getting up and getting space? I will talk about this in just a second. The path card, the letter card, the anchor card, the mountains, obstacles, and trying to find your way through, the weightedness of the cross card, the anxiety and chitter chatter of the birds, the ring, which is actually a combination of friendship and passion, creating this commitment and this new relationship. relationship. The sun breaking through on a successful moment in the key card. What are the inner hidden depths that we can find in the bear card in Mother Earth? You know, the movement of the fish and for abundance and or resources. You know, the bursts of color from the bouquet, and so on and so forth. So they aren't arbitrarily done. They are very specifically done for the cards. I did change, and I do want to talk about this for a minute, because one of the things that to understand about this system, just as you have to often understand with tarot, we don't have very few of us have ever lived under a rulership of kings and queens and knights and pages that we see in tarot. And so we have a different understanding of family sometimes. Family doesn't always look like a mother and a father and a son and a daughter. We have different changing dynamics, but we have to understand them through the lens of their time. We have cards like the Devil card and the Judgment card in tarot. We have, or sometimes the Pope, which is also the Hierophant. These are coming because the decks came out of a Christian, predominantly Roman Catholic background, and that's what the culture that they came out of. And so we learned to think of the Judgment card as a sense of rebirth and assessment of what it is, and then moving on. We look at the Devil card as a scapegoat. What are we putting off our own flaws onto something else, or as temptation. So we find modern ways of seeing those things. We don't have to throw them out. We just learn to work with them. And the same thing can be found in Lenormand, in a Lenormand deck, because we have the Ring card, which would indicate that the ultimate goal of any relationship is marriage, right, between a man and a woman. And that's not always the case today, but it can still mean the same thing: a committed relationship, a committed partnership, right? We have the understanding in Lenormand that there is a man and there is a woman, and all interactions are going to be between a man and a woman, right? That's no longer something that we publicly work with, and especially as a professional reader. And so sometimes modern decks will offer extra cards. So, for example, the Clair de Lune Lenormand offers 2 men and 2 women, so that you can have pairings. However, if you need 2 men or you need 2 women, or however you want to pair those up. That's become quite the norm for a deck to have at least extra man and women cards, so that you can do that. As a professional reader, I find that a little bit difficult, just because you then have to ask a person what their gender is. It's not always obvious. Especially when you're reading across distances, what is your gender? What is the gender of who you might fall for? What if it's both, right? What if you're looking for a relationship that might be coming that to that person could be male or female? It doesn't really matter either way, right? It starts to get complicated. So when I made my deck, all of these cards are a standard Lenormand deck. There is a Ring card. There are all the cards that we just went over in the other decks. The only thing I changed was that the Man card is now the querent. It's always the person that I'm reading for. It's them taking an active participant in their own life. And the significant is whoever or whatever the situation, that you are open and receptive to being significant to you. So, I feel like that was like but Lenormand is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful system. It is quick, it is precise, it is very cartomancy style, which are usually very clear, very blunt, but don't let anybody fool you. It can go very deep. I read with Lenormand for spiritual questions just as much as I read with Lenormand for work questions. It is capable of being quite in-depth, but what it has to say, it says quite precisely and clearly and quickly. You're not going to need to spend as much time analyzing. It's going to go as deep, in my opinion, but it is going to say it in a very, okay, bam, bam, this is it, this is it, this is it, right? And primarily, you're going to see Lenormand readings in sets of 3. Where you have sort of a coming together to gain perspective on a difficulty that may be a weighty problem or difficulty that may be there, whatever the situation might be. There is some way in which you need to reach out and connect to others to gain perspective on this situation, on this difficult, weighted situation. bam. You're not going to sit here and analyze, oh, even though I do love my cards and they are quite beautiful in my opinion, you're not really going to sit there and think, oh, okay, well, here we have the blue of the sky meeting the green of the earth, and they're coming together, and the way that they're coming together is forming angel wings over here, which people have told me they see a lot of different things in here. But you don't need to do that. The garden card is is coming together, right? It is a coming together here in order to gain some perspective about a difficult situation. It's very quick. It's very precise. It's very beautiful. Let's use some other ones as well. So you're primarily going to use 3 cards, 5 cards. My favorite, other than the Grand, I don't do a lot of 3-card readings. I don't do a lot of 5-card readings. I primarily do a 9-card reading or a grand tableau in which all the cards are placed on the table and you read it like a giant, wonderful, amazingly fun puzzle. But you also, I would be remiss in, I am trying to nutshell this. Again, please remember these are just Snapchats. These are just snapshots. Again, I have a whole playlist of Lenormand videos, and if you're completely new to Lenormand, I recommend going to the playlist Lenormand because it does kind of start with the basics and work its way to the grand tableau in fairly small bite-sized pieces. But the other thing that's beautiful about Lenormand is it has what are called significator cards. We talked about the man and the woman. So the man would represent a male person who is who you're doing the reading for. The woman would be a woman that you were doing the reading for. If you're doing a reading for the man and his significant other is a female, then the woman card would represent his significant other. Those are significators. The tree card stands for health and well-being. So you would look at the cards around or nearby this card to look at issues of health. Again, if a marriage is there, we might look there, or a committed relationship, we might look there, right? If we're looking for money, we would look at the cards around the fish card. Heart for romantics that are not, maybe a committed relationship, but love and romance and what's going on there. As a travel in the offing, we would look around the card for travel, and so on and so forth. We might look to the clouds. If somebody's feeling really depressed or having a really hard time, what's going around the clouds cards that might be causing this issue and might show a way forward, right? So there are many cards like that. For me, the anchor is the work card. If somebody has a question about work, I would look at the cards that are around the anchor card, and these are called significators, and they make for amazing readings and very precise, knowing, okay, this is a situation, let's go over here and see. It's not really a big question. It's just like, okay, let's take a look and see. So the way that I do a 9 card is I look for the anchor card. Somebody has a question about work. So I would go and find the anchor card, and after shuffling and thinking about my topic and thinking about what's going on, and of course it's going to be of course I already missed it, and you're like, oh, stop, it's right there. It's always the case. It's always the case. Well, did I drop the anchor card? Oh, there it is at the end. Of course, it's at the end, so I might just do a 3 card, or I would just continue to go ahead and build what I have, and that would be a 6 card around. Again, this is not to be a lesson. I know this is probably infuriating, but again, there are plenty of videos out there. But then I would look to this and I would say, okay, well, right now it looks like there's some ending. There's something that's coming to an end because we have the coffin card here. There was a journey here and a longer path of finances and money that was going on in the past that right now is kind of coming to an end, which isn't, that's not something you're probably too interested in, right? But But in moving into the future, the client really wants to start to think out of the box, be smart, be clever. The fox also often comes up seeking advice from somebody who knows. So I might say, okay, you really need to get some advice on how to move forward, and you need to figure out a way to infuse. This is a heart card, love card, passions. How can you infuse your passions into your job? How can you really get motivated and infuse passion into your job so that you can start to turn things around and go forward in a fresh way? Bam, there you go. That's the answer. You know, there's your answer, right? It's that kind of quick fire questions. So why would you use this over tarot? Well, some people are simply Lenormand readers and they don't read tarot. Some people are tarot readers. Many people are tarot readers and they don't read Lenormand. So sometimes it's just a preferred method, right? But it is very different. Where tarot, you might sit and look at a tarot card and say, oh, here we have the Page of Cups, and in this she has a cup in her hand and she's holding her hand outward. It's asking you to please reach out and hold your emotions and your feelings out in an act of vulnerability, to trust that the universe has what it has to offer. Behind her we have this river that is coming around the bend, and we know that things are going to be turning around soon. There's a forest here that's quite dark. If you were in the midst of it, it would be really scary, but if you get outside of the forest and come to the riverbank, the sun is going to light things up and you're going to see your way forward. You see what I'm saying? You can literally sit with it and go into a tarot card, and dig into layers and layers and layers, right? I mean, there is a beauty and there is a strength and there is a joy. It's of course, one of my favorite styles of reading. Lenormand, on the other hand, is precise, right? You need to make a decision. We don't look and see, oh, well, these are train tracks and one's going off this way and one's going into this tunnel. It's going to be dark for a while, but it's going to come through on the other. No, we don't do that with Lenormand. It's the path card. You've got a decision to make. Make a decision, right? Make a decision and follow your instincts. Things are confusing right now. You really can't see the way forward. It's really maybe impacting your sense of well-being, and your health might be being impacted here. But there is some change coming. The stork is indicating that there is a shift coming, a change is coming. There you go. You don't go into in depth, but that is where its beauty lies, because it is precise, it is clear, it is blunt. It doesn't really leave a lot of questions for the most part. It's just very clear about the answer, and it gets down to work. And so there is a time and a place for that, and a style of person that finds that to be refreshing. And so that is one of the strengths of Lenormand, is just getting in there and answering questions quickly and clearly. Obviously, once you know what you're doing with it, may not feel like that way if you're brand new to it. But you know, when you're kind of clicked with it and you got it under your belt, it's a very quick, very specific, very clear form of divination, and it really excels with that. This has just been another, again, snapshot, divination snapshot, looking at Lenormand.